What if I told you that some of the canned foods sitting in your kitchen right now could become significantly harder to find in the months ahead? Not because stores suddenly run out overnight, but because a combination of rising costs, supply chain pressures, changing weather patterns, and global market shifts is quietly reshaping what ends up on grocery shelves across the country? Before we dive in, take a moment to comment below and tell us which canned food you always keep stocked in your pantry. And if you enjoy learning about important consumer trends that could affect your household budget, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Over the past few years, shoppers have become increasingly aware that food prices can change faster than expected. But what many people do not realize is that canned foods face unique challenges because every product depends not only on the ingredients inside the can, but also on the metal container itself. Transportation networks, manufacturing facilities, energy costs, labor availability, and global trade conditions. When pressure builds across several of these areas at the same time, companies often face difficult decisions about pricing, production, and distribution. The first product attracting attention is canned soup, a pantry staple that millions of households rely on for convenience and long shelf life. While canned soup remains widely available today, manufacturers continue dealing with higher ingredient costs, packaging expenses, and transportation fees, leading some brands to reduce promotions, limit certain varieties, or focus production on their best-selling products. Another item facing pressure is canned corned beef, which depends on international sourcing and complex supply chains that can be affected by shipping costs, import expenses, and changing market conditions. Although it is still available in many stores, consumers in some areas have reported fewer discounts and less variety than they were accustomed to seeing in previous years. Vienna sausages are another long-standing pantry favorite, experiencing similar challenges. Rising production expenses and packaging costs have made it harder for manufacturers to maintain previous pricing levels, and shoppers may notice gradual changes such as smaller package sizes or fewer promotional offers. Moving into the seafood category, canned salmon is facing growing pressure from harvest conditions, processing costs, and transportation expenses. Seafood supply chains are often global in nature, meaning disruptions in one region can influence prices and availability thousands of miles away. Sardines have also become increasingly popular among consumers looking for affordable protein options, but growing demand combined with higher packaging and distribution costs is creating additional strain. Some specialty and imported sardine products have already become less common on certain store shelves. Then there is canned tuna, one of the most recognizable canned foods in the world. Tuna remains a popular choice for families seeking convenient meals, yet it faces many of the same economic pressures affecting other seafood products, including fuel costs, fishing expenses, labor requirements, packaging inflation, and transportation challenges. What makes all of these examples important is that they reveal a larger trend taking place behind the scenes. The biggest risk is not that these foods disappear completely overnight. Instead, consumers may slowly notice fewer choices, higher prices, reduced shelf space, and less frequent sales promotions before realizing that market conditions have been shifting for months. Understanding these developments now can help shoppers make informed decisions instead of being caught off guard later when favorite products become more expensive or harder to locate than they once were. As we move further down the list, some of the canned foods facing the greatest long-term pressure are products that many consumers use regularly, without ever considering how complex their journey is from farm or fishery to store shelf. Canned chickpeas are a perfect example. Over the last decade, chickpeas have become increasingly popular thanks to growing interest in plant-based meals, high-protein diets, and affordable home cooking. However, chickpea production depends heavily on agricultural conditions, international trade routes, and transportation networks. When droughts, extreme temperatures, or logistical disruptions affect production regions, supply can become tighter, and prices may gradually rise. Another product worth watching is canned coconut milk. Used in everything from soups and curries to desserts and dairy-free recipes, coconut milk depends on tropical growing regions that can be highly sensitive to weather changes. Storms, flooding, drought conditions, and shifting agricultural patterns can all influence harvest levels. Combined with higher shipping expenses and packaging costs, these factors create challenges that may eventually affect what consumers see in stores. Evaporated milk is another pantry staple that has remained popular for generations, especially among families who enjoy baking or maintaining emergency food supplies. While evaporated milk continues to be widely available, producers must manage rising dairy processing expenses, energy costs, labor expenses, and packaging inflation. These pressures may not immediately remove products from shelves, but they can contribute to higher prices and reduced promotional activity over time. Canned tomatoes provide another fascinating example because they appear simple on the surface, yet depend on a remarkably complex supply chain. Tomato production requires suitable weather conditions, reliable water access, agricultural labor, transportation infrastructure, and processing facilities capable of handling large harvests within short periods. When drought conditions reduce yields or extreme weather affects growing regions, the impact can continue through the supply chain long after the harvest season ends. Consumers often notice these effects months later through higher prices or reduced availability. Olive oil packaged in cans is another category drawing attention. Global olive production has experienced challenges in several major growing regions due to climate-related pressures, changing weather patterns, and reduced harvest volumes. When production falls while demand remains strong, prices naturally increase. This does not necessarily mean olive oil products will disappear, but consumers may encounter fewer discounts, smaller packaging options, and higher costs than they have seen in previous years. Canned mackerel also deserves a place on this list. Like tuna, sardines, and salmon, mackerel remains a valuable source of shelf-stable protein. However, seafood products face multiple layers of economic pressure, including fuel costs, fishing operations, regulatory requirements, processing expenses, packaging inflation, and transportation fees. Each additional cost can influence the final retail price consumers pay. What makes these trends especially important is that they reveal how interconnected the modern food system has become. A drought affecting one agricultural region can influence ingredient costs. Rising fuel prices can increase transportation expenses. Higher metal costs can make cans more expensive to produce. Labor shortages can affect processing capacity. When all of these factors occur simultaneously, manufacturers often respond by simplifying product lines, reducing package sizes, limiting less popular varieties, or focusing resources on their strongest-selling products. Many shoppers never notice these gradual adjustments until they compare current shelves with what was available several years earlier. The reality is that the food industry constantly adapts to changing conditions. And while most of these products are not expected to vanish entirely, they may become less accessible, more expensive, or harder to find in certain locations. That is why informed consumers often pay close attention to market trends long before significant changes become obvious to the general public, allowing them to better understand the forces shaping the products they depend on every day. When all of these developments are viewed together, a much larger picture begins to emerge, and it becomes clear that the future of many canned foods will be influenced not by a single crisis, but by a combination of economic, environmental, and logistical factors that continue evolving throughout 2026 and beyond. One of the most important things consumers should understand is that food supply systems rarely change overnight. Instead, they tend to shift gradually, often in ways that go unnoticed until the cumulative effects become impossible to ignore. A product that was once available in 10 different varieties may eventually be offered in 6. A brand that frequently appeared on sale may stop offering discounts as often. Package sizes may become slightly smaller while prices remain the same, a phenomenon many shoppers have already experienced across multiple food categories. Shelf space may be reduced as retailers prioritize products with stronger sales performance or more reliable supply chains. These changes can happen so slowly that most people only recognize them after comparing current shopping experiences with what they remember from a few years earlier. The canned foods discussed in this video, including soup, corned beef, Vienna sausages, salmon, sardines, tuna, chickpeas, coconut milk, evaporated milk, tomatoes, olive oil, and mackerel all represent categories facing varying levels of pressure from rising costs and market uncertainty. However, it is important to remember that pressure does not automatically mean disappearance. In many cases, products remain available but become more expensive, less frequently discounted, or more difficult to find depending on the region and retailer. Another factor worth considering is consumer behavior itself. Whenever people hear reports about shortages or rising prices, some rush to purchase larger quantities than usual. While understandable, this reaction can sometimes increase short-term demand and place additional strain on already stressed supply systems. Responsible purchasing and informed decision-making are often more effective than panic buying. The goal is not to create fear, but to understand the realities shaping modern food markets. Manufacturers, distributors, retailers, farmers, and fishing industries are constantly adapting to changing conditions, investing in new strategies, improving logistics, and seeking ways to maintain supply despite challenges. At the same time, global events, weather disruptions, transportation bottlenecks, fuel costs, labor shortages, and packaging expenses continue influencing the decisions companies make behind the scenes. For consumers, awareness remains one of the most valuable tools available. Paying attention to trends, comparing prices, watching inventory patterns, and planning purchases carefully can help households navigate uncertain market conditions more effectively. Looking ahead, experts expect some sectors of the food industry to stabilize while others may continue facing volatility. Certain products could experience improved availability if harvest conditions improve or transportation costs decline. Others may remain under pressure if production challenges persist. Because these variables are constantly changing, flexibility and information become increasingly important. The biggest lesson from this entire discussion is simple. Never assume that today's grocery store conditions will remain unchanged indefinitely. Markets evolve, supply chains adapt, and consumer habits shift. The people who stay informed are often the ones best prepared to manage those changes without unnecessary stress. If you found this information useful, now is the perfect time to join the conversation. Let us know in the comments which of these canned foods you buy most often, and whether you have already noticed higher prices, fewer choices, or reduced availability in your local stores. Your experience could help other viewers understand what is happening in different regions. And if you want more in-depth reports on food prices, consumer trends, supply chain developments, and the products that could impact your household budget,